Today we're digging into a story that's really making waves in the world of American whiskey, Jim Beam. I mean, it's one of the most iconic names you'll find on any bar shelf anywhere, and they're about to do something pretty much unthinkable. They're shutting down their main distillery.
Yep, you heard that right. For a whole year, the industrial heart of this global brand is just going to go silent. Those massive copper stills that pump out millions of gallons of bourbon, they're going cold. It's a move that, honestly, seems to fly in the face of all business logic.
I mean, this is a massive decision, with literally billions of dollars on the line. And the reason why? Well, it's not simple. It's this tangled story that weaves together global politics, changing tastes, and what you could only call a perfect economic storm. So let's unpack how we got to this point.
All right, so first things first, what is actually happening here? What is this surprising decision that has the whole industry talking?
So, Suntory Global Spirits, that's Jim Beam's parent company, they've announced a full one-year pause on making bourbon at their main campus in Clermont, Kentucky. This is all planned for 2026. Now, to be clear, it's not a complete ghost town. The smaller craft distillery and the visitor center, they're staying open. But the main production line, the heart of the whole operation, is going to fall silent. In an industry where time is maybe the most important ingredient, a move like this is huge. So what on earth could lead to such a drastic step?
Well, the first piece of this puzzle actually takes us north, to Canada. And this is where we see how a messy international trade dispute can have a direct impact on what's in your glass. It all kicked off with trade tariffs. When the U.S. government imposed them, a really powerful consumer boycott took hold up in Canada. Shoppers just started consciously leaving American spirits on the shelf, turning a political fight into a direct hit on the industry's bottom line.
And what a hit it was. Just look at this number. In the second quarter of 2025, the value of U.S. spirits exports just plummeted by a staggering 85%. 85! That's not a dip. That's a near total collapse of a really critical export market.
Chris Swanger, who's the CEO of the Distilled Spirits Council, he put it pretty bluntly. He warned that this wasn't just some temporary dip, it was a fundamental consumer shift away from American brands. The alarm bells were ringing, and they were ringing loud and clear.
So you've got this huge problem coming from the outside, right? A trade war. But believe it or not, that was only half the story. At the very same time, another major challenge was brewing, much, much closer to home.
Yeah, while they were fighting for market share abroad, distillers were also facing this quiet revolution in how Americans think about drinking altogether.
We're talking about something called a health perception shift. And really, all that means is that the public, as a whole, changes its mind about how healthy or unhealthy something is. You know, for decades, moderate drinking was kind of seen as neutral, maybe even having some benefits. That whole idea is now being seriously challenged.
And this chart from Gallup, wow, it really tells the story. Look at this. Back in 2015, only about 28% of U.S. adults thought moderate drinking was unhealthy. Fast forward to 2025, and that number has totally flipped, jumping all the way to 53%. We've crossed this critical line where the majority of people now see even moderate drinking in a negative light.
And this isn't just an opinion poll. It has real-world consequences, especially since this trend is being driven by young adults. Right now, only 54% of Americans even report drinking alcohol at all. That is the lowest level in 30 years. The takeaway is simple. The customer base, right here at home, is shrinking. So you can see what's happening here, right? You have two very different, very powerful forces hitting the bourbon industry at the exact same time. It's not one problem, it's two hitting from opposite directions.
And this slide just lays it out perfectly. On one side, you've got that external pressure, collapsing demand from a key export market thanks to a trade war. And on the other, you've got internal pressure, shrinking demand at home because people's habits are changing. It's a classic two-front battle.
So what happens when you put all that together? Well, here's the core of the problem. For years, distilleries were ramping up production, making more and more bourbon to meet what seemed like endless demand. Now, they're sitting on this massive, aging supply of whiskey while demand is suddenly falling from every direction.
And we're not talking about a small problem here. This number represents the estimated value of Kentucky's bourbon industry. There are billions of dollars, thousands of jobs, all tied up in that aging liquor. It makes Jim Beam's decision to hit pause, well, it starts to look like a calculated move to try and rebalance this huge supply and demand equation.
You know, Jim Beam's decision is really a bellwether for the whole industry. It raises this fundamental question about the future of one of America's most iconic products.
Because pausing production might help with the oversupply in the short term, but it doesn't solve the fundamental demand problem. So the real question is, how does an industry that's built on tradition pivot to face a future that's being shaped by forces so far outside of its control? The answer won't just affect Jim Beam, it's going to define the next chapter for all of American whiskey.